On a quiet farm, a mother duck sat on her nest waiting for her eggs to hatch under the gentle spring sun. One by one, small, fluffy yellow ducklings emerged, chirping happily and stretching their tiny wings. But from the last egg came something different, a large, gray, awkward duckling who looked nothing like the others. From the very first moment, he felt different. His feathers were scruffy, his movements clumsy, and his appearance drew the attention of every creature on the farm. The other ducklings and even the hens seemed to avoid him, and whispers of mockery and laughter followed wherever he waddled. Loneliness and confusion filled the young duckling's heart. He wanted to belong, to be accepted like his siblings, but the farmyard seemed cold and unwelcoming. Yet even in the face of mockery, a spark of hope lived inside him, a hope that one day he would discover who he truly was and be recognized for his worth. This is a story of courage, patience, and self-discovery, a tale that teaches teenagers that true strength comes from perseverance, that appearances can be deceiving, and that anyone can grow into something extraordinary. On a serene farm nestled between rolling hills and a sparkling pond, spring had arrived with warmth, chirping birds, and the scent of fresh hay in the air. In a cozy corner of the barnyard, a mother duck sat patiently on her nest, feathers ruffled but eyes bright with anticipation. She had spent weeks incubating her eggs, feeling the small movements inside, imagining the life that would soon emerge. Each egg held a promise, a spark of life waiting to break free. One by one, the eggs began to crack. Tiny, cheerful yellow ducklings emerged, shaking off fragments of their shells and stretching their soft wings. They chirped and hopped around the nest, full of energy and curiosity. The barnyard animals watched with amusement and delight, and even the children of the farm squealed with excitement. But the last egg took longer. It trembled and quivered more than the others, and when it finally cracked open, out came a duckling unlike any other, larger, awkward, and covered in dull gray feathers. He blinked with wide, uncertain eyes and took a tentative step onto the straw. The contrast with his fluffy, bright yellow siblings was striking. The other ducklings quacked in surprise and darted away, unsure what to make of him. From the very first moment, the little gray duckling felt the sting of difference. Whispers began to ripple through the farmyard. "Look at him! How clumsy he is!" chirped a group of hens. The goslings, although curious, kept their distance. Even the barn cat, lounging lazily on a beam, flicked an unimpressed tail at the newcomer. The children, noticing his awkward waddling, laughed and pointed. The gray duckling's heart sank with each glance, each chuckle, each subtle rejection. He wanted to fit in, to be loved and accepted like the others, but the world around him seemed unkind. He tried to join his siblings in their play, attempting to flap his wings like them or mimic their cheerful chirps. But his awkward movements often led to stumbles and awkward tumbles. The other ducklings would hop aside, giggling at his clumsiness. Even the mother duck, though gentle and caring, could not prevent the whispers and side glances from the other farm animals. Loneliness began to weigh heavily on the gray duckling. He wandered to the edge of the pond, watching the reflection of his unusual feathers ripple across the water. "Why am I so different?" he wondered aloud. "Why can't I be like them?" His heart ached with longing for acceptance and companionship, but he also felt a small, stubborn spark of hope, a quiet voice telling him that one day he would understand why he was unique and perhaps be valued for it. Despite the mockery, there were tiny moments of kindness. A gentle robin would chirp softly near him as if encouraging him. A stray kitten would sit quietly nearby, offering warmth with its presence. These small acts reminded him that not all creatures were unkind, and that perhaps the world held more than ridicule and loneliness. The days passed slowly, each one a mixture of awkward attempts to fit in and the painful sting of rejection. Yet, with every tumble, every whispered insult, and every glance of disapproval, the little duckling's heart grew a little braver. Deep inside, he began to realize that the world would not change for him, and he would need to find his place in it. And so, on that quiet farm, beneath the bright spring sky and the watchful eyes of both friends and critics, the gray duckling took his first steps toward understanding himself. Though he did not yet know the path ahead, The journey of growth, resilience, and self-discovery had already begun, a journey that would one day reveal the extraordinary within the ugly. Life on the farm continued. But for the gray duckling, every day felt heavier than the last. His siblings swam gracefully across the pond, chirping and playing as though the world were made for them. The gray duckling tried to join, but each awkward flap and slip of his feet drew stares and snickers. The hens whispered about him behind his back, and the goslings would dart away, leaving him alone in the water. Even the farmer's children, once curious, began teasing him relentlessly. "Look at that clumsy one child exclaimed, pointing as the duckling stumbled over a tuft of grass. "He doesn't belong here!" The words cut deep, and though the duckling tried to ignore them, they echoed in his mind. His reflection in the pond looked stranger than ever, gray, awkward, and unfamiliar. He wanted nothing more than to be accepted, but the farm seemed a place where he could never belong. Each day, the duckling wandered further from the other animals, finding quiet corners where he could be alone. Sometimes he would sit beneath a willow tree by the pond, watching the yellow ducklings swim in perfect synchrony, their wings catching the sunlight like golden ribbons. He felt envy mixed with sadness, wishing he could be like them. Yet also a faint spark of hope burned inside him, a whisper telling him that his journey had not ended and that he was meant for something more. In the midst of this loneliness, small moments of kindness began to appear. A sparrow, perched on a low branch, would sometimes chirp softly at him, as though offering encouragement. A shy mouse would scurry nearby, sharing crumbs of food. These gestures reminded him that not every creature judged by appearances. There were beings in the world who could see beyond feathers, beyond awkwardness, beyond difference. These brief connections gave him the courage to keep moving forward. Even when the weight of rejection felt unbearable, at times, he would attempt to play with the other ducklings, trying to mimic their joyful chirps and playful splashes, but his awkwardness made him a target. The other animals, thinking themselves superior, mocked him mercilessly. "You'll never fit in," said a young hen, pecking at the ground near him with a sharp glance. Even the barn cat would watch, its green eyes gleaming with amusement as he stumbled yet again. The constant reminders of inadequacy made the duckling question his own worth. As days turned into weeks, the gray duckling began to notice the pattern of his existence. No matter how hard he tried, acceptance did not come from those around him. He realized that if he wanted to find peace, he might need to leave the farm. The idea was frightening, leaving the familiar for the unknown. But something inside him stirred, a feeling that perhaps the world beyond the farm held the answers he sought. He might find creatures who appreciated him for who he truly was, or at least discover his own strength along the way. Even as fear tugged at his heart, he began to dream of a life beyond mockery, of a place where his differences would not be seen as flaws. The loneliness that once crushed him now became a teacher, showing him resilience, patience, and the value of hope. With every insult, every glance of disapproval, and every whispered laughter, the gray duckling grew stronger, not in body, but in spirit. He was learning that his worth was not determined by others, and that the journey ahead could reveal his true self. And so, with his heart both heavy and full of quiet determination, the gray duckling began to imagine a future where he would belong, a place where he could grow, flourish, and perhaps even discover the extraordinary being he was meant to become. The farm had been a place of lessons, harsh, yet necessary, and he understood now that leaving might be the first step toward finding the life he was destined to live. As spring slowly gave way to summer, the gray duckling spent more and more time alone, wandering the edges of the farm and staring into the shimmering pond. He watched his siblings glide across the water with ease, their golden feathers reflecting sunlight like living sparks. Each effortless movement reminded him of his own awkwardness, but rather than breaking his spirit completely, it sparked a quiet resolve inside him. If he could not find acceptance here, perhaps he could find it elsewhere. The thought of leaving the farm was terrifying. The familiar sights and sounds, the gentle quack of his mother, the chatter of the barnyard, the scent of fresh hay, had been his world since birth. Beyond the fence, however, lay the unknown. Dark forests, winding rivers, unpredictable weather, and creatures he had never met. Yet the pangs of loneliness and the sting of mockery had grown stronger than his fear of the unknown. A tiny voice inside whispered, "There is a place for you. You will find it if you are brave enough to go." One morning, as the sun painted the sky with streaks of gold and pink, the gray duckling made his decision. He waddled to the edge of the pond, peering at the horizon where the farm ended and the wide world began.